Studio. Oh, it's a girl that's been on my mind all the time. Studio. Oh, she don't even know my name. Think she likes me just the same. Studio. Oh, yeah.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
I don't believe RF Kennedy Jr. is lying. I think this is what he was told and this is what he believed. But I can tell you emphatically that Joe Kennedy was a bootlegger. He was involved with the Mafia. He was tied up with Frank Costello. As a matter of fact, there was a point in time when Frank Costello wanted to kill him. I heard it from different sources at different times. They weren't together. I had discussions with my father about it, who was around and was in the know. He was the underboss of the Colombo family at that time. He had no reason to make it up. My dad wasn't personally involved in this, but sure, he knew about it. Everything in the world is corrupt. Every agency on the face of the earth. The most corrupt agencies, institutions in the world are governments. Going back to the days prior to the Roman Empire, they're always corrupt. They're always in need of reform. They're the biggest agencies around, and there's corruption in all of them. We're seeing it now. The fraud, the abuse, we're seeing it. We've witnessed it. We know it. So why is it so far-fetched to believe that a government agency like the CIA, who hated these people, wouldn't be involved in the assassination?
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the JB and Sabby show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We have quite a bit to talk about tonight. Tonight's theme is who is to blame. And you'll see this with all of those stories. The gentleman who was speaking there, that was Michael Franzesi. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He is a former Mafia boss. If you haven't seen that interview, go check it out. It's on his channel. I think that's very important to watch. And I just want you to keep that in mind when we get to the RFK Jr. Blackmail story. So this guy obviously knows a lot of information. So just things that I think that people should think about. If you get the chance, don't forget to go ahead and answer that poll question there. Do you believe that RFK Jr. is being blackmailed? Let me know. I'll go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, what's up, fam? Shout out to Cecilia Cartagena, who became a Sabby member. Give Cecilia a big whoop whoop. Thank you. Shout out to Dave, says, hello, Sabby and family. Be sure to get Fight, which is about the inner conflicts within the Democratic Party concerning President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Vote green in 2026. Yes, we will get into that tonight. A lot is being revealed, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Larez, says, hello, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RB and fam. Voted maybe. I'm most sure of maybe. As a department sec, he has quite the bit of power now, plus anyone in power is pre-approved and compromised already, most likely. That's a good point. Shout out to New York Varsity, says, allow me to be the first to say shooby-dooby-doo. Let's go. See y'all at the chat tonight. Greetings Wars, says, they're all being blackmailed. That's how they're managed. Shout out to Simply, says, I'm loving the deep dives. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback about those. Greetings, Joanna. That Giuffre woman is no victim. She's a scammer. She was outed today. So I hope Sabby has updated her story. I do have the updated story. We'll get into that. Shout out to Hannah, says RFK blackmail. Greetings, Pitchforks, says my friends welcome you. Shout out to Kenman, says love Sabby. She makes the news fun. Thank you. That's my goal here. Shout out to Cloudness. Happy new Black Media Appreciation Month. Salute to the truth spitters. God bless you, fam, for keeping it thorough. Be one fam, one love. Greetings, VH Sandwich. I believe RFK is being blackmailed, but that he's also just a total piece of shit. Greetings, ACAB, says off work tonight and hanging out with you all, free Luigi. Shout out to CBC Voters, says happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs and Eric T. Red. Shout out to Mark, says Sabby, Nick's back. Yay. Yes. My comrade Nick from RBN is back from break. So yeah, he was live earlier today. Greetings, Chapman, says I can't wait. Shout out to Bill Bobby, says haha, Sabby. Greetings, C Shata, says hey, Sabby. Shout out to Trust and Success, says nice karaoke before the countdown. It's the final countdown. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. Shout out to Beyond Ebony, says peace, Sabby family. Shout out to P. Smith, says Trump is just trolling when he says he'll run again. Greetings, Casey, sends solidarity and fire. Shout out to Graham, says hey everyone. Greetings, B. Snap, said saw Sabby with Richard Wolff. They rock at telling the truth. Yeah. Interviewed Professor Richard Wolff. That video premiered earlier today. So check that out when you get a chance. Professor Wolff talked about Doge. We also talked about AI, and he also dove into what's coming this year economically. So he did bring up the recession. So interesting conversation there. And shout out to Wesley, says doing the doobie do right now. Greetings, Jimmy Zim Zam, says Michael. Yep, that was Michael. Shout out to Olive. Trump is definitely being blackmailed by Israel. Greetings, Boaz, says hi, Sabby and Eric. Looking forward to the show. And greetings, Dwayne, says howdy, y'all. Shout out to Rupert, says Columbo did it. Greetings, Crispy, says disability rights are under attack. Stop Texas versus Becerra. Fight for Section 504. Yes, this is true. That is true. And thank you, Charles, says I like that shirt. Do you? It's different. It's different. It has a little pocket. I don't know. I kind of like it. But thank you. Good to know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to all of you. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron, and we can go ahead and dive into tonight's stories. Like I said, quite a bit to get into here. We will do call in after the show, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who want to join. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. We have ultimates. Don't forget about the Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. Yeah, kind of jabby, kind of jabby. It does. It has a little pocket, like right here. You know, when I was little, we used to have these shirts. I'll tell you in a minute. Hold on. And thank you to the members as well. Thank you guys so much. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Richard Goodyear, Kanal Boyce, and Jude Stacer. Thank you guys so much. And shout out to all of the newbies and the not so newbie patron peeps. Thank you guys so much for your support. Yeah, when I was little, right? We used to have these shirts, like I used to get them a lot, like for school. And there was like, they used to have the pockets, and like, I don't see pockets as much, but they were just like the regular collar shirts, but they had the pockets, and we used to put like our pencils and stuff like in the pockets. Like this one has a snap pocket, so it closes, but we used to have the ones that didn't have the snap pocket. And I used to be able to put like my pencils like right there, like in the pocket. But apparently at some point that became known as nerd attire. But I don't know. I like pockets. Okay. I like pockets. And I especially love, Saul said that's where smokes. And I especially love a dress that has pockets. There's nothing like a dress that has pockets. Ladies know you guys know what I'm talking about. It can be hard to find, but I see it's becoming a little bit more trendy nowadays. So yeah, I love pockets. Tonight, who is to blame, ladies and gentlemen? Let's go to that thumbnail. Quite a bit of questions and quite a bit of information that is being revealed. Dun, dun, dun. Tonight, we are discussing Obama rejected Kamala. There is more information coming out about the whole dive into Kamala's campaign, behind the scenes, what was going on. There is a new book that is out, and those journalists are going on their podcast tour. They've already made a number of appearances. The book came out today. So I imagine a bunch of people are going to try to buy that book. But if you don't want to buy the book, don't worry about it. We're going to get into quite a bit of that tonight. So we'll get into a bit of that. We're also going to discuss RFK blackmail claim. What is going on here, right? So there's viral videos going around that it could be possible that RFK is being blackmailed. Now, this isn't a news story, but it's been brought back into the spotlight. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on. And I'm also going to show you something that may make you think the opposite, right? So we'll dive into that. Make sure you answer that poll question. We're also going to discuss, Epstein victim fighting for life. Oh boy. Yeah, this is a doozy. We do have an update on that as well. That Epstein victim, this whole thing that happened. It's very questionable, and we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss, this is a funny one, Donald Trump third term. Is Donald Trump considering running for president again? Oh my God. And is it possible? And I think what we're going to dive into more tonight is how that actually can be possible. So we're going to get into the thick of that. And last but not least, this is a big one. Luigi Mangione ballot measure. We're going to give an update about Luigi Mangione's current situation. There's news about that. And also there appears to be a ballot measure with his name on it. Is that a good idea? Is it going to work? We'll dive into all of that tonight, fam. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we will do call in tonight after the show, so stay tuned for that. Again, the theme is who is to blame? We're going to get started with this Luigi Mangione story here. First and foremost, there is an update about Luigi Mangione's case, obviously not favorable for Luigi Mangione, and that is that it appears that Pam Bondi is seeking the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. Now, there's a couple of issues here. Obviously, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Luigi Mangione has not had a trial, not yet. I just want to remind everybody about that. As it stands right now, he has not had a trial. So he is still innocent until proven guilty. But Pam Bondi is pushing this right now. Luigi Mangione should face death penalty for cold-blooded assassination of United Healthcare CEO Pam Bondi orders. Don't you guys think it's interesting how it's considered cold-blooded? And how, I guess I would say harsh people are being about this particular case when people are killed in the United States every day. Every day. This is a violent country. There are other countries that don't have this issue, but people are killed in the US every day. And you don't see this type of push for the death penalty, right? But this is the difference between an everyday person and someone who is obviously was a part of that elite bubble. Someone who made a lot of money. So this, if I were to make a guess, this is a thumbs up and a wink and a nod for the corporate class, for the corporations. This is Pam Bondi telling them, I see you and I'm going to look out for you. So it's protecting the rich, right? So let's get into this because we're going to see what she's trying to do here. It says here that the Trump administration will take the rare step of seeking the death penalty against Luigi Mangione for his alleged cold blood killing of Brian Thompson, pushing for what would be the first Manhattan federal execution in 70 years. Luigi Mangione's murder of Brian Thompson, an innocent man and a father of 2 young children, was premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America. That's coming from U.S. Attorney Pam Bondi. After careful consideration, I have directed federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in this case as we carry out President Trump's agenda to stop violent crime and make America safe again. So pause. One of the things that you already notice is that she's already condemning him. She's already saying that he is guilty. She says it here, Luigi Mangione's murder of Brian Thompson. So this case has heavily been tainted by the press. And this is something that everyone should have a problem with, whether you think Luigi's innocent or not, whether you agree with what happened or not. Everyone deserves the right to have trial and to stand trial. And it is up to a jury for them to decide whether or not they believe that he is innocent or guilty. The problem with this particular case is that the press has already said that he's guilty. The perp walk says that he's guilty. So the jury, which I don't think has been selected yet, the jury has already been told that he is guilty, not innocent until proven guilty. And that could cloud their judgment. And I told you guys this before. I'm still not 100% convinced that the people that I saw in those photos, which were revealed in mainstream press, is Luigi Mangione. I saw 3 different pictures that look like 3 different people. And I'm not 100% certain that that is him. And I can't honestly say that it is. And so everybody needs to have that in their mind at this point. Like, this person does deserve to stand trial. So that is what is happening right now. Pam Bondi is trying to get the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. And I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out during this case. I think we're going to see some information that we were not quite aware of. And we're going to need to get into all of that. And I think, like, it's just really weird to me that they're just automatically saying, oh, that's the person that's guilty, when there were photos with someone without a mask, photos with a mask. Like, again, I don't know that this is that person. But now there's something else that's happening, and I think this should catch everyone's attention. It appears that there is now a ballot measure that is named after Luigi Mangione. In this controversial push, they are trying to make it illegal for health insurance companies to deny treatment. I kid you not. Let's jump into this, ladies and gentlemen. This is big news here. Controversial healthcare ballot initiative named after alleged murderer Luigi Mangione. So we can see it here, and we'll get to the video in just a second here. This is happening in California. A newly proposed ballot initiative, controversially named after alleged murderer, aims to prevent health insurance companies from denying medical care to patients. So here's my take on this. I'll get into it a little bit more when we get to the video. I am all in favor of an initiative that prevents health insurance companies from denying treatment. All in favor. But I feel like this ballot initiative is just a tip of the iceberg. What should be done here? I think the ballot measure should be done to accomplish single payer healthcare in California. And the reason why I say that is because California, in the state house, they did have the votes. A lot of people may not remember this. This isn't the first time. Single payer was brought up in California a couple years ago, and they apparently had all of the votes that they needed for this legislation to pass. But apparently, when it was time for it to be brought to the floor for a vote, there was a no, we can't do that, because big money interests came in and said, don't do it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that they had the votes, just like they had the votes to pass the California reparations bill. So if they already had the votes in the state legislature, instead of doing a ballot measure that's going to prevent health insurance companies from treating patients, why not go all in and have a ballot initiative to establish single payer healthcare in California? That's my take. I say take it a step further. Remember what I told you guys before. Never ask for the minimum. Always over ask, right? Because a lot of times what you ask for, they're going to try to make it less. But this is a ballot initiative, so people would actually vote on this. In fact, the gentleman who filed that ballot measure was on News Nation. I want you to hear what he has to say. There are people, of course, shaking their heads at this. They're not too happy about the fact that it's named after Luigi Mangione, but listen to this.
All right, Paul Eisner joins me now. Paul, tell me, you're naming this after a man who's accused of murder. Why name it after him, regardless of how important this legislation might be?
It basically was designed to get attention to the issue and get publicity for the issue.
Okay. Well, you succeeded there. There have been plenty of videos and examples of doctors talking about insurance companies refusing to cover things. There was one doctor who talked about the fact that the insurance company was refusing to pay for a wheelchair for his patient, who was a double amputee, and demanding that the doctor prove that his patient couldn't walk.
Okay. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, those kinds of stories you hear about a lot?
Yeah.
I have not heard that one, but that's the first time I've heard that one.
Okay, tell me.
So it's not the first time that I've heard that one. And this is another one. You guys know, I've told you this before. I used to work in healthcare many years ago. It was the first job that I got right out of undergrad. And I will tell you this. You would be surprised how difficult it can be for a patient to receive a wheelchair. Wheelchairs are not cheap. And it's not just wheelchairs. You know those little scooters that you see people have sometimes in the grocery store? The little electric scooters that people sit on and they just press the button and it just moves like on its own, like automatic or whatever. Those are really hard to get. I'm trying to tell you guys, like, you have to go through your insurance company. It's not uncommon for insurance to not want to approve it. It's expensive. It goes on and on. So it's not the first time that I've heard that story where health insurance company denied wheelchair or denied an electric scooter, those little walkers sometimes. Like, this is the problem that people run into. And it's not even just about whether or not you need it. It's more so about whether or not the insurance company wants to pay for it. So this is what people run into a lot of times. But again, this is the gentleman who is pushing that ballot measure.
What your bill would do, how this would work.
The bill basically says insurance may not delay, deny, or modify medical procedure or medication, or reduce payment where the treating physician or the delay, denial or modification could result in disability, death, amputation, permanent disfigurement, loss, or reduction of any bodily function.
All right, well, how do you, I mean, the health insurance industry says we're not delaying or denying. We're just simply doing due diligence.
There's also a provision that if, first of all, if they're delaying or denying, they have to have it reviewed by a physician. They can't, it's not an insurance person. It's by a physician. Secondly, there's also a remedy that if they act improperly in the event a lawsuit is filed by any insurer who sought to delay, deny, or modify or reduce their payment, etc., they have the burden to prove by clear and convincing evidence that it was unnecessary, not result in disability, amputation, permanent disfigurement, loss, or reduction of bodily function, and they're liable for treble damages and attorney's fees. There's a civil remedy in there.
All right, so back up a second. Who's making these decisions? So your point is that it's not doctors who are second guessing the doctors; it's accountants.
I've heard that people. I've never worked in the insurance industry. I did a short period where I was representing, insured defendants, but. That was liability insurance mostly, but that was not one of my favorite areas of practice. But it basically says that a decision to delay or deny a modification must be made by a physician, and it makes it a felony not to use a physician to delay, deny, or modify.
So I can talk a little bit more about this because when I worked in healthcare, I worked in billing, and I want to explain to you how it works. When you have a diagnosis, every diagnosis has a medical code. So there is a medical, claims professional that is going to give you a diagnosis. And with that diagnosis, there's a code that is attached to it. So when they do your paperwork, they're going to put in code, blah, blah, blah. When that claim is submitted to the insurance company will basically scan the codes and they'll receive a response, sometimes automatic response that'll tell them whether or not that code is accepted by the insurance company. And I want to give you an example. The code dementia is a tough one. Now, again, when I worked in healthcare at that point in time, there were certain health insurance companies that would give an automatic denial for a dementia code. Crazy when you think about it, right? When you think about all the people that are in like nursing homes and they do have dementia, it's insane that some health insurance companies would deny that. But at that time they did. I don't know how it is now, but at that time, it was a long time ago, there were certain ones that would flat out just automatically reject a dementia diagnosis. What he is saying is that the only way they should be able to deny it is if a physician says it is not needed, which actually in a way makes sense, because if the doctor says this is what you need in order to get better, this is what you need in order to live, this is what you need in order to get rid of this illness, then the insurance company shouldn't be able to deny it, but they do. There are certain codes that certain companies will pay for and they'll cover, and there's certain ones that they don't. So the reporter here, it was clear to me she's not as familiar with this, or maybe it's not something she ever had to worry about. But there are a number of us that have had to worry about that, and we've been stuck with those bills. And we know what it's like when the insurance company doesn't cover. So that's how it works. I wanted to break that down for you so that you really understand. Let's go in a little bit more here.
What are the chances this is actually going to will pass, this legislation you have introduced?
It's something that goes, the way it works in California is you have to gather over 500,000 signatures. I don't know the exact amount, valid signatures. It then goes on the ballot. The voters decide yes or no. It's a proposed section amendment to the Health and Safety Code. I think it needs a simple majority. If it passes, it becomes law in California.
Do you think the chances are good it'll pass? There's a lot of public outrage. We saw that after Luigi Mangione was arrested for the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. A lot of Americans are very, very frustrated.
A lot of Americans are, they're frustrated. They're frustrated at the health insurance companies, not as much at Luigi. Just wanted to add that part.
I have not gathered any poll. I've had emails calling me sick, evil. One person saying that they hope me and my family are killed by a bunch of deranged assassins. That's the extreme. I'll eliminate the profanity in that one.
Wait,
But
who are
most
these
people think
from?
it's a good idea. I just get email. My email address is public, and that's just in the emails that I've been getting.
Are you getting any backlash for naming this after Luigi Mangione?
I'd say about a quarter of them complained about naming it after Luigi Mangione. I had one call on a different issue from somebody from North Carolina earlier today. And an email from someone in Kansas suggesting I contact the Kansas Attorney General to try and get a similar thing in there. I'm getting emails I'd say are probably about 3/4 positive, and most of the negative ones complain about naming it after Luigi Mangione.
All right. Fascinating, but it's obviously an issue people have a lot of strong feelings of. A pretty healthy chunk of healthcare claims are denied by insurance companies, and medical expenses are the number one reason for bankruptcies in this country. So it's an issue. Paul Leisner, thanks for joining us. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it is a really, really big issue. And a lot of people have had to deal with it, right? Now, we don't condone violence on this show, but I think what the media was not expecting was a public response to Luigi Mangione's situation, because a lot of people, regardless if they're on the left or the right, a lot of people have had to deal with this. There are people who have gone into debt, medical debt, because insurance companies wouldn't pay. There are people who have gone bankrupt because a loved one was diagnosed with cancer. Chemotherapy is very expensive. I'm sure there are some of you who know about that. Like, these are things to think about. So there were a number of people who understood where the pain was coming from. Now, I bring this up to say this. This is someone trying to get this issue resolved on the local level, because I feel like we've been asking for universal health care, Medicare for all, for God knows how long, right? It's been since 2016, I think, for a lot of us. And it's very clear that the federal government not only doesn't even want to increase the minimum wage, but they don't even want to give everybody health care, right? So it's very clear. So here is someone who's trying to say, okay, let's try to accomplish this via the state way. Let's try. California would be a perfect state for them to get single payer first, because it's a big ass state. It's a big state. It's a blue state for the most part. There's red pockets, but California, if California did it, I think that would really set the precedent for the rest of the country. This is similar how Canada did it. From what I understand, it was passed by province. It wasn't just one big swoop where they said, okay, everybody in Canada has universal health care. No, it was done by province first, right? And also, of course, going through the states can be difficult. I'm not here to tell you there are no struggles or, issues you may run into with that. But it would make sense to me that you would try to do that in a state like California first, right? But that's not what he's asking for. What he's asking for is this ballot measure here, which basically says that health insurance companies can't deny treatment if the doctor gives you a diagnosis. And what I'm saying is go all in. If you're going to go big and run a ballot initiative for single payer healthcare. That's my take. But that brings me to this moment, because you see, California passed a number of initiatives in 2024. And again, this is direct democracy, ladies and gentlemen. When we go to the ballot box and we vote for the president of the United States, that's not direct democracy. That's representative democracy. When you vote for your Congress members, that's representative democracy. Ballot measures are direct democracy. You are actually going to the ballot to vote on a question, something that is going to impact your state. Sometimes it's an amendment. Sometimes it's a direct initiative. But to show you some of the things that passed: California Proposition 1, Behavioral Health Services Program and Bond Measure, that passed. Just going through a number of them here. We're not going to go through all the details, but you guys can always look this up. You can Google it to see the details. Another thing that passed in California, the Public Education Facilities Bond Measure. Here, they're talking about $10 billion in bonds to fund construction and modernization of public education facilities that passed. Again, direct democracy in the hands of the voters here. The California right to marry and repeal amendment. This makes it so that it's a repeal of Proposition 8, which defined marriage as a union between a woman and a man, declared that a right to marry is a fundamental right in California. So again, this is why I tell people, when you say you're not going to vote and just stay home, don't stay home, because you do have these questions on the ballot. They passed the Parks, Environment, Energy, and Water Bond Measure, right? So that's a big one. It's interesting considering what just happened with the wildfires as well. This one, some will fail, right? So like this one failed. I'm not going to get into the ones that are overly complicated that failed, but another one here, remove involuntary servitude as punishment for crime amendment. That one failed. So you need to know what's happening on the local level. This is what I'm trying to tell people. While we're all focused on the presidents, there's laws being passed in your states that people may not be aware of. Here's a big one. $18 minimum wage initiative did not pass in California. So they were trying to increase the minimum wage again there. And here's another one. Prohibit state limitations on local rent control initiative. Another one that could directly impact you, especially if you live in California. I know there's a number of you that are in California. So I tell people to just look out for these things, but you already know one that's going to be on there coming up soon, and that's the Luigi Mangione initiative. Require certain participants in Medi-Cal RX program to spend 98% of revenues on patient care initiative. Passed. So these are just some of the things. And like we went through all of these last year. There's a section on my channel where you can just go straight to the ballot initiatives section to see that. Here's another one, healthcare related. Managed care organization tax authorization initiative. Passed. Permanently authorizing tax on managed care organizations based on monthly enrollees. And I believe that is almost about it here. Oh, drug and theft crime penalties and treatment mandated felonies initiative. This is another one that passed in California, where they were trying to classify certain drug offenses as treatment mandated felonies. So that's another big one that you can see there. So these are just some examples. And this is why I say to people, pay attention to what's happening locally, what's happening in your state. I do think these things are very important. And please don't stay home. Please don't stay home and just sit on the couch. If you're in California, you already know one of the initiatives that is going to, apparently looks like is going to be on the ballot if he gets enough signatures, which he probably will be able to. And that's the Luigi Mangione initiative. So let's sit back and wait and see what happens here, folks. All right, let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Steve said, I'm in Echo Park, LA. Oh, there's a song called Echo Park. I always wanted to check that out sometime. Thank you, Walter. They are fakety fake. Thank you, Teddy. Didn't New York abolish the death penalty in 2004? It sounds like this is like Pam Bondi's trying to do this through the federal government. So it sounds like, I guess it's one of those things that she may be able to override because this is a federal case. So that's what I assume. Thank you, Kinman. Pam Bondi is a blonde bombshell. Interesting, Kinman. Michael says, we pay for free healthcare in Israel, but not for our own citizens. That's what I've been saying. Yep, Miss Ritchie, my mom was lucky to get one through Medicare for all. I think she's talking about the wheelchairs. Gina says there are people who want to work but can't get their hearing aid. That's another one. Remember when Bernie was running, he wanted to expand Medicare to also cover the hearing aids? It don't cover everything. Rogel, there is a massive assisted living crisis and it's getting worse. $5,000 minimum a month for assisted living in California. It's expensive. I mean, even when I worked at skilled nursing facility, it was expensive then too. Thank you, Roger. Sab just DM'd you rules to running CBIs. You can check California. Thank you. Joy. So what happens if the doctor can't diagnose the issue? No coverage? The system is not healthcare. See what I was saying? But that's what I was saying. This is why I think they should run a ballot measure for universal health care. But good question there, Joy. Thanks, Danny. Where were the similar over-the-top perp walks for Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein when they were arrested in NYC? Oh, well, you know they're not going to do that to them. They're not going to do that to them. Thank you, Kevin. Dr. Wilson debunked the funk, has several videos thoroughly criticizing RFK. Dudes responsible for children deaths in Samoa. Oh, the outbreak. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. And thank you, Cynthia. Hey, pretty lady. Thanks so much for standing on business with them folks. Keep applying pressure on them folks. Well, thank you, Cynthia. I will do that. Thank you very much. Okay. Again, the theme tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is who's to blame. And when we get into our next story here, we will also, or I think you will also ask that question. I don't know why it's asking me to do this again. Sorry, guys. Sometimes when I have okay, here we go. A Substack link, sometimes it signs people out. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash the like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're diving into our next story. Okay, so there are viral videos going around right now that allude to RFK Jr. possibly being blackmailed. And this goes into Israel and a couple of other things. But before we get to those viral videos, I do just want to say this is not a new story. I know some people think it is, but it's not. In fact, my comrade, Indy Left from Indie News Network, he covered this quite a bit ago. And I want people to see what he said. So I want to give credit where credit is due first. And then we're going to get to the new videos where people are saying, listen, something's up. I think RFK Jr. may be under blackmail. So let's go ahead and get started with the first time I saw that this was mentioned. And that was from Indie Left News. He also writes for Substack as well. RFK Jr.'s field of red flags, plenty of reasons to dismiss his nomination. Now, he called it out and tried to warn people about this. These are different acts. Running as a Democrat. Act 2, running as an independent. Act 3, flirt with running party affiliated. That was when RFK Jr. was trying to run with the Libertarian. Remember that? When he was considering that, just trying to see if he could have some type of traction there. 4, pull a gimmick, naming a VP willing to fund the campaign. That was Nicole. 5, Kennedy bows out early, makes a deal, and endorses Trump, even after he said he would not. Let's go on. Act 6, Trump wins, like we all knew he would months before, nominates RFK Jr. as his HHS secretary. Bobby salvages something. We are watching this play out in real time. Just how many red flags do you need? Selling the VP slot to buy corporatist Nicole Shanahan for $12.5 million. Again, this was a big sign, right? She was a former DNC bundler. She was married to, of course, Sergey Brin, owner of Google or co-owner of Google, with 9 figures in the bank and an agenda. So think about that. She outbid Aaron Rodgers and Jesse Ventura. Let's go on. 2, immigration and southern border chud pandering. Saw that RFK Jr.'s town hall and he supports sealing the U.S. southern border and fixing parts of the border wall. He didn't even mention how U.S. foreign policy in Mexico, Central and South America creates refugees seeking asylum in the U.S. Hard pass. So he didn't make that connection to foreign policy, right? That was another sign that people really needed to pay attention to. Here was another one. Said he wouldn't join the Trump ticket. Technically, no. but is joining the Trump administration as HH secretary. So Indy made all these receipts. This was when he tweeted, just to quell any speculation, under no circumstances will I join the Donald Trump on an electoral ticket. Our positions on certain fundamental issues, our approaches to governance, and our philosophies of leadership could not be further apart. But he had no problem joining his administration, right? So there's a number of things that Indy warned people about. This is a big one. 2 Epstein flights. He lied to Whitney Webb and said there was one. Questionable friendships with notorious alleged murderers O.J. Simpson and, of course, Bill Cosby. Now, many people were friends with those celebrities prior to all these things that happened. But the Epstein flight thing is the big one. And that's the one I think that more people I wished would have brought attention to at that point in time. Yeah, he did. When he interviewed with Whitney Webb, he told her there was one flight. However, later on, it was revealed that there were multiple flights. So that was another one there that was kind of like, I don't know. You kind of remember if you had one flight or more than one, right? So this was another thing. That connection that he had to Epstein. 5, he called Mike Pompeo brilliant and a man of the people in 2024. Of course, you guys know Mike Pompeo, huge neocon, big issue, right? Why would he say that? And he said that here. So these are just some of the things that Indy did call out in this article. Another big one was he's been a lifelong corporate Democrat. See, people forgot about this, or some people did. Don't forget he endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2000, 2006, 2008, 2016. He praised Hillary as Secretary of State. He endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. 40-year lifelong friend of Joe Biden, endorsed John Kerry in 2004, had no plan for when Democrats screwed him over other than leave the party and then drop out, endorsing Trump afterwards. So these were a number of things, red flags. Another one, hired ex-CIA daughter-in-law Amaryllis Fox to manage his campaign after Dennis Kucinich leaves, pushed for Trump to name her CIA deputy director. This was another flag that I talked about as well at that point in time. Dennis Kucinich also came on the show. I'm going to show you what he said about all this. 8, called CIA agents good, patriotic people, including Amaryllis. By the way, he said this in person when I covered his presidential announcement. He also said that. So I hope that was something that people caught when I covered that announcement here in Boston. I was on the ground for that. He said the majority of people working at the CIA are good, patriotic people committed to their missions and the law. So you guys get the gist there. Pushed Russiagate. That was another one people may not remember. Yes, RFK Jr. did push Russiagate just like Rachel Maddow. Just like Rachel Maddow. See, people forget some of these things. He said Putin is a thug and a bully. Son fighting for Ukraine, only found out because he got a credit card bill. Again, RFK Jr. can't control like what his son's an adult. He can't control what his son decided to do. That's up to his son. It is kind of weird that he didn't know. Like that's kind of weird. He goes into like the weird animal stuff. I don't really care about that. I just think that's just his thing. Telling the bear story to Roseanne, dumping a dead bear in Central Park. It was a number of things. The whale head story. I think you guys remember some of these things, right? The legacy, the Kennedy family, entire reputation due to his last name, desperate for decades to be a member of the club. And this is true. I live here in Massachusetts. This is a big part of it. Now, I point all this out because now there is this these viral videos. Candace Owens has been diving into this pretty deeply. I have 2 of them that I want to go through with you, that she feels that RFK Jr. is being blackmailed. So again, I just want to reiterate to people, this is not a new story. Indie News covered that quite some time ago. But now more people are hearing about it because Candace Owens is diving into it and she has a larger platform. So that's important for people to know. Now we're going to dive into some of the things that she said, and I'm going to show you what Dennis Kucinich said when he came onto the show. And I want you to put 2 and 2 together and you let me know if you believe that he's being blackmailed. Here's the first clip we're going to dive into. Listen to this about him and Rabbi Shmuley.
But I have never been under any illusions that RFK Jr. was not in some capacity being controlled. That has never, as soon as I saw him with Rabbi Shmuley, and he couldn't explain why that was. And as soon as I was watching his interviews with Dave Smith, and he couldn't explain why he couldn't lodge even one critique of Israel, I got very suspicious. Without getting into the gossip elements of what I have learned, what I would kind of instead do is rely on the obvious understanding that he still appears to have issues with impulse control. I think that's a fair assessment, right? That is best evidenced by the fact that despite running for president of the United States and knowing that he would be under intense scrutiny, that all eyes would be on him, he still engaged in a rather high-risk behavior when he decided to start a sexting relationship with a mainstream media journalist, Olivia Nuzzi, who was adversarial to him, okay?
So this young woman here, and I talked about this when this was announced, I think it was probably last year. I forget. We've been covering this for so long, I feel like, that it was outed. She is a journalist, and apparently that there was some type of relationship going on between her and RFK Jr. While he was running his campaign, allegedly. And that comes from her. That comes from Olivia, which is really interesting considering that RFK Jr. has been very open about the fact that, yes, he's had this problem in the past of being a womanizer and cheating on his spouse. And he said that that was something that was in the past. Well, then this Olivia person pops up out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden she says, I'm having a relationship with him too. Like, I know he's married, but I also have a relationship with him. He's not telling you guys the full story. So now people are kind of scratching their heads at that time and are kind of like, whoa, did he really change his stripes or what? Let's go on a little bit more here.
That right there, forgetting who said what, that right there tells you that he is not fully able to control himself. And people who cannot control themselves will find themselves being controlled. Without getting into further details at this moment about what I know and what I have been told, I can tell you that one name that kept coming up is Amaryllis Fox. Now, I've never heard of Amaryllis Fox. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's actually quite extraordinary what she's accomplished in her life. She's a former CIA officer, born Amaryllis Thornburg. She attracted the CIA's attention when she was really young while she was pursuing her master's degree. When, after the September 11th attacks, she created an algorithm to identify local terrorist safe havens. And I'm just going to read you a couple of more high points from her teenage years, okay?
Let me pause here for a second. Now, remember, many of you remember when I was covering RFK's campaign, and I know you guys were, at one point people were like, stop coming after RFK. I don't think anybody was harsher towards RFK than I was. But that being said, this one was a big red flag for me. I said, guys, he says he's going to fight against the deep state and go against like the CIA and take these agencies down, which I never really did believe. I said, don't you guys think it's a little bit strange that after Dennis Kucinich stepped down as his advisor to his campaign, that he decides to hire someone who was a former CIA agent? I mean, that was a big one for me to call out. And I think sometimes some people just didn't want to see it. They didn't want to admit it. And I'm like, nah, like, don't you guys think this is weird? Like, it's a little bit odd, bud.
The age of 18, this is from her Wikipedia. In 1999, at the age of 18, she secretly recorded an interview for the BBC with the Burmese leader, Aung San Suu, then under house arrest. And in order to arrange the meeting, Fox worked with a local dissident journalist. Okay, we're talking, like, this is crazy for an 18-year-old, with whom she was communicating with via taped messages that were inside the water tank of a toilet at a cafe in Rangoon. Her intent in going overseas in that trip had been to make a secret recording of a planned pro-democracy protest that was supposed to take place on September 9th. Yeah, pro-democracy protest, the CIA, an 18-year-old. It's giving color revolution, okay? Wikipedia goes on to say that Fox became one of the CIA's youngest female officers at age 22, assigned to quote-unquote non-official cover, which entailed her living abroad with fake identities and no diplomatic protection. She has said she assumed the cover of an art dealer and focused on preventing terror organizations from acquiring, you guessed it, weapons of mass destruction. Every time, weapons of mass destruction. She ended up marrying another fellow agent named Dean Fox. That's how her name became Agent Fox, who she met while she was undercover in Shanghai. So she'd been all over the world undercover, which I always think about, what does that do to your brain when you lie for a living? You lie about who you are for a living. You pretend to be someone that you're not. Anyways, her and Dean Fox eventually got divorced. And then you're never going to guess what happened in her life. After 8 years at the agency, she left the CIA in 2010, which I always wonder, do you ever just leave the CIA? Is that actually a thing? Can you really get another job after? Do they just let you go in the CIA? What happens to a person when they leave the CIA? Anyways, I'll tell you what happened to her. Then she went to a Burning Man festival. I know what you're thinking. You're like, whoa, you mean like the Burning Man festival, middle of the desert, a bunch of kids high on LSD, tons of love drugs, connecting with one another. Yeah, she went to a Burning Man festival. And a mutual friend of hers introduced her to RFK Jr.'s son, RFK III. Yeah. And they just fell in love, which many people do at the Burning Man festival, I would imagine. It's all about love and it's community. It's like,
Danny said kids don't do LSD anymore, Candace. I don't know what the kids are doing these days, right?
like hippie community, I would say. And they got married in Cape Cod in 2018. And by 2023, she was working for RFK Jr.'s, her father-in-law's presidential campaign. Beautiful stuff, guys. That's it. I just wanted to tell you a beautiful, beautiful love story. Just love that so much.
So you had someone who was basically had, from the sound of the timeline, had just left the CIA, goes to Burning Man, meets RFK's son. They get married, and now she's now a part of the Kennedy family. Now, this will all make sense in just a second. And then there's this part. Candace Owens believes that RFK is being blackmailed sexually, that it's sexual blackmail that's against RFK. Now, my whole thing is this, like, I feel like RFK is a grown ass man, like a whole grown ass man. And I feel like RFK, a lot of these things, RFK had made these decisions on his own, regardless if there was blackmail or not. And you'll see what I mean when you get to the Dennis Kucinich part, when you hear what he says. Some people have been wondering this when it comes to Israel, like why RFK Jr. has such strong, support and diehard, like, fight for Israel, even during like a genocide. Some have been asking that question, like, you say you care about children. Why don't you say anything about those children that are dying in Gaza, right? And that's where some other people were saying at that point in time, like, yo, is this dude, they got something on this dude? Like, what is really going on? But I think when you hear Dennis Kucinich, you might feel a little bit differently about that when it comes to Israel. But she believes that there is sexual blackmail against RFK Jr. Listen to this.
Assassination hit squad. Who is this human being? Who is Olivia Nuzzi? Why is she calling shots, clean shots, on people like Candace Owens and directing and being some ghost hand behind the scenes? And it's not, once you understand who Olivia Nuzzi is, shocking that she would go after Tucker Carlson. What's rather shocking is that Jessica Reed Krause is bragging about how close she is to Donald Trump while having a person who is taking shots at real conservatives in this country. So I'm going to tell you about Olivia Nuzzi. She was a correspondent for New York Magazine. Yes, the one that we just uncovered, that whole weird pedophile senior writer sympathizer. She was a correspondent for New York Magazine from 2017 to 2024. So she had quite a long tenure there. And so, yeah, she had quite a long tenure at New York Magazine until in September of 2024, New York Magazine had to place her on leave after it was disclosed that she was having an affair with RFK Jr. Now, they both maintained at the time that this was clearly a sexting affair. But the other element of this is super interesting. Olivia, currently living in Malibu, which means now she doesn't live in a city, which means now she's got to drive a car, is driving a car. she's driving a foreign car in Malibu, and her license plates, and I'm not giving you the end of a license plates, but her real true license plates are, and I can show you here, RFK 66 blank.
Interesting, huh, ladies and gentlemen? Interesting. Now, this doesn't look like a new car, right? Or whatever. But don't you think that's kind of weird? RFK is part of the license plate. Now, again, it's no secret. Again, like I said, he has a history of being a womanizer. So that's not a, I don't know how Cheryl Hines feels about all this, but she is his wife. But he had that history before he married her. So I would say, I assume she knew what she was getting into. I assume. But believe that he had changed and that type of thing. So this Olivia person, this journalist, again, yeah, she did. She had to step down from her job because what she did was against protocol. Like, you can't have a sexual relationship with a presidential candidate that you're interviewing and not make that known to the magazine that you work for. You can't do that. That's why she had to go. Let's continue on a little bit more.
Blank. That is some coincidence. I gotta tell you, okay? Like, I gotta tell you, it's a weird thing. Like, it's not every day that your license plates reflect the sexting scandal that you just had, okay? It's not every day. Who purchased this foreign car? Who got this car to Malibu? Okay, it's a British car. And your license plates are RFK and some numbers. So we discussed yesterday how we all kind of know who killed JFK, but we keep doing this weird song and dance in America, like no, it's awkward. We don't want to say, but things are adding up. And we've always known, we weren't really waiting for the release of these files to vindicate us. It's very clear. Why else would you lock something down for this long? It's very clear who was involved. And the weirdest song and dance and all that we're all doing at the moment is pretending that RFK Jr.'s unflinching loyalty and, quite frankly, his fear of saying anything negative about Israel is not bizarre. Okay?
It's not bizarre, but that's not the only thing. Doesn't anybody think it's a little bit strange that after the release of the JFK files, which a lot of that stuff I told you guys we had discussed on the show before anyway, because Rick Sterling came on and he had a lot of that material already for his book. But don't you guys think it's kind of strange that after those files were released, as much as everybody's been talking about it, don't you think it's weird RFK hasn't said anything? Do you guys think it's just a little bit strange? Don't you think it's strange that when RFK was running for president, the interview that he did with Mike Tyson, where he talked about who he thought may have killed, JFK and his father, who was all involved in this, didn't you guys think it was a little bit strange that interview was removed? And through all this conversation, like during his campaign, this was something that he did bring up, like on his own, not like he was pressured to. And now that those files have been dropped, and a number of things that I pointed out in the paperwork was that it said, obviously the parts that they wanted to be redacted were parts that included Israel. And now nothing. Now RFK is not saying anything. So to me, that was strange. I thought that was odd. I'm like, really? You ain't gonna say nothing? Rome's in the house, says RFK Jr. been a Zionist. He doesn't need to be blackmailed just like most politicians. He's an Israel supporter. We're gonna get into that. We'll get into it. We're going a little bit more here with Candace, and then I'm gonna show you guys.
I'm gonna pull up Dave Smith here. Dave Smith has been just an incredible powerhouse. He was majorly supportive of RFK Jr. as a candidate. Saying essentially, because he's moderate, like, I like him because he doesn't like war. Like, he is a libertarian, and he has been a leader in the libertarian movement for quite some time, Dave Smith. And he got behind RFK until he didn't. He felt like it was very weird that RFK had just this blind spot for Israel. It was weird to him. And he calls him out. He called him out right to his face. Skylar, let's pull that up. Dave Smith just calling out RFK Jr. for this like remarkable hypocrisy while pretending to be anti-war. but also simultaneously like unwilling to say anything about the state of Israel.
I remember
it is the worst humanitarian catastrophe in the world
you can take
right
me out
now.
of this.
And the idea that you, who are supposed to be the anti-neocon, anti-war presidential candidate, are immediately on October 7th, before we even had an investigation, before we even knew what happened there, you immediately say, what basically you said everything they say about Ukraine. You said it was an unprovoked attack. Which, like, come on, give me a break. An attack from Gaza against Israel is unprovoked. And then you said, we have to support them in whatever it takes. Well, look, sir, we're watching it right now. This is whatever it takes. Just women and children dying under rubble. Every day you can't go on social media without seeing another video of some baby dying. This is what we're supposed, after the last 20 years of disastrous wars, we got to support the next one. I mean, sir, this is like a biblical level of evil. And why? Why should we as Americans have to fund this? Why should we have to give them a blank check? I'm sorry. It's been long enough.
And RFK didn't have an acceptable answer, and that was something that was one of the reasons why he was just not going to be vocal in his support. Dave Smith was not going to be vocal in his support of RFK Jr., but he said the biggest thing was just the fact that he was hanging around Rabbi Shmuley. I mean, like, this is like a thing that everybody just agrees on. He is just a filthy, disgusting human man, and he made him a part of his campaign. This is a person who openly blackmails people. He's being sued right now from a wealthy Jewish family down in Miami for trying to extort them. He deals in extortion and blackmail in broad daylight and tried to extort the owners of Fontainebleau by calling them Nazi sympathizers, everything that he did to me and everyone. He was just like a smear merchant. And RFK Jr. is just buddy with him. How weird.
Yeah, it is weird. A number of us called that out, like when he was running, like, dude, why are you surrounding yourself with this nutso? Okay, this guy is cuckoo. But the question still remains. Is he having this strong support for Israel because there may be some type of blackmail? Like, I don't know if I honestly, factually, I don't know if there is or isn't. I don't have any evidence to show that he is being blackmailed. But I think Candace is raising the question to make people think. But I do have this. I do have this question with Dennis Kucinich when he came on after he stepped down from RFK Jr.'s campaign. And I did ask Dennis Kucinich about the Israel support. And I want you to hear what Dennis said. As much as you can tell us, because I know that you're not a part of that campaign anymore, do you foresee RFK Jr. maybe changing his position on that particular issue, and why or why not? And what do you think about this idea that we probably could have a chance this time around to break the duopoly?
Well, first of all, Israel never had a stronger supporter than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Period.
So did everybody hear that? There was Dennis Kucinich right there letting you know that Israel never had a stronger supporter than RFK Jr., period. That's prior to October 7th. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to support Israel after October 7th. Like, Dennis Kucinich made it very clear to me that RFK was always a strong supporter of Israel. So that wasn't new. Now, whether or not that is connected to some type of blackmail, I don't have any evidence that supports that. But the evidence that I do have is what Dennis Kucinich said. Like, that's been apparently a lifestyle thing for RFK Jr. And I don't know if the rest of the Kennedys feel this way, but I don't know. But I do know this. We go back to this clip here. And this is from Michael Franzesi. I hope I'm saying his name correct. So Michael Franzesi was a former mafia boss. He was connected to the Colombo family. Listen to what Michael said about the Kennedys.
I don't believe R.F. Kennedy Jr. is lying. I think this is what he was told and this is what he believed. But I can tell you emphatically that Joe Kennedy was a bootlegger. He was involved with the mafia. He was tied up with Frank Costello. As a matter of fact, there was a point in time when Frank Costello wanted to kill him. I heard it from different sources at different times. They weren't together. I had discussions with my father about it, who was around and was in the know. He was the underboss of the Colombo family at that time. He had no reason to make it up. My dad wasn't personally involved in this, but sure, he knew about it. Everything in the world is corrupt. Every agency on the face of the earth. The most corrupt agencies, institutions in the world are governments. Going back to the days prior to the Roman Empire, they're always corrupt. They're always in need of reform. They're the biggest agencies around, and there's corruption in all of them. We're seeing it now. The fraud, the abuse, we're seeing it. We've witnessed it. We know it. So why is it so far-fetched to believe that a government agency like the CIA, who hated these people, wouldn't be involved in the assassination?
So this is something that I want you to take home. When you get a chance, watch that full video, because I did see the full thing. I think it's pretty deep. I would love to have a conversation with him. I should probably learn how to pronounce his last name first. I think someone just told me in the chat. Yes. Franchise. Thank you. Thank you, Danny. But look, people need to understand that the Kennedys are powerful people. The bootlegging and all that connection, like, that's true. That's not false. So people do have to remember that Joe Kennedy, yes, he did have those connections. He did have those ties to the mob industry. So people have to understand, once again, so if you know that they're powerful people, if you know that they're well connected like that, surely there would be some type of way that if RFK Jr. found himself in a tight pickle, that he would be able, or the family would be able, to leverage the resources that they have and the people that they've met along the way to get him out of it. Unless they just didn't want to get him out of it. So I don't have proof that RFK Jr. is being blackmailed. But what I do have is the history of the Kennedy family and the connections that they had. And you can't erase that. I mean, you can't just sit up here and say, no, they never had any connections to the mob. No, they did. They really did. If you watch the full video, he goes into detail about how they even helped JFK in Chicago. It's all corrupt. It's all corrupt. There's so much corruption. I keep telling you guys, there's no heroes. This is part of the reason why a lot of these people are so crooked and so corrupt. So they are powerful people and they have powerful ties. So that's the question that I ask. If there is some type of blackmail going on, one would assume that the Kennedy family would have the resources and the connections to get him out of it. The question is, would they want to? Let's go to the comments here in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, JJ. Sabby Sab, I'm at work listening to the show. I hear that from quite a bit of people. I wonder what you guys do for work. Fox, thank you for the super chat. New York Varsity says RFK was not caught. He came out front with this before Whitney Webb. I like Webb a lot, but this is not how this went down. Yeah, I don't think we were saying he didn't admit that before Whitney Webb, but in the interview with Whitney Webb, he said he was on the plane once and he was on the plane multiple times. Thank you, Justin B. RFK started off as a Democrat and seems to still be a Democrat who is also a Republican. To those of us with eyes open, it all makes sense. They are the same party. Thank you, JJ. The Kennedy name might be forever tarnished. Skylar says, I'm flabbergasted that RFK is slanging that thing like... Stop! I am flabbergasted that RFK is slinging that thing like that for so many women to be up in his sheets. Like, that is wild. Slanging that thing. Thank you, Steve. I have a question. If Luigi is guilty, why would he not change his appearance or clothes and go to a McDonald's with a gun and a manifesto in his pocket? I didn't understand that either. I mean, I question all of it, Steve. I question it. Shout out to Cynthia Howard, who just became a new member. Give Cynthia a big whoop, whoop. And thank you, New York Varsity. Go back to the pic of the car. The pic was taken on the beach, and it looks like it does not even have wheels. No one in Malibu would drive that. That's a good point. Thank you, Marvin. Sab, have Ryan Dawson on, anti-neocon RPT RFK/JFK expert. I can put that on my list. Thank you, Roger. I remember during my Obama days seeing Olivia on MSNBC as a contributor. That interview with Tyson, not completely gone. I screen recorded the whole thing. Oh, Roger was smart. So Roger recorded it, you guys. But yeah, it's definitely Gonzo from YouTube. Interesting, right? Yeah. All right, guys, if you haven't done so, smash the like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're diving into some wild, wild stuff. Again, who is to blame? That's the theme for tonight. And this story is wild. Do you remember Virginia Giuffre? Virginia was the young woman who accused Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein of sexual assault. She's the one that's in that notorious picture where she's hugging Prince Andrew. If you don't remember, just give you a little bit of a flashback. And then I'm going to tell you what has apparently happened to her as of recent. Strange things are going on, folks. Just a reminder.
A U.S. court has just revealed a settlement agreement between convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre, and it could affect Giuffre's civil suit against Prince Andrew. She says she was trafficked by Epstein and forced to have sex with his friends, including Prince Andrew. And she says the prince knew she was underage. He has always strongly denied all these allegations.
He denied those allegations, but as you guys could see there, the picture kind of obviously they're hugging each other there. She was underage in that picture. Why was he hanging out with her? What was going on there? What is a whole ass grown man doing hanging out with an underage girl at that point in time? But remember, Prince Andrew being who he is, I mean, come on, they have a way of making sure that people like him are going to be protected and that he would get out of any type of mess there is in front of him, but he was never held responsible.
He says the prince knew she was underage. He has always strongly denied all these allegations. The 2009 settlement between Epstein and Giuffre that was made public today does not mention Prince Andrew directly, but it says that Giuffre will, quote, release liability for, quote, any other person who could have been a defendant against her claims. Oral arguments in the case against Prince Andrew begin tomorrow, and the prince's legal team is expected to argue for dismissal based on this 2009 settlement. CNN legal analyst Paul Callan joins me from New York with more. What do you think the chances of Prince Andrew's legal team are in court tomorrow? They're basically saying Giuffre signed a deal in 2009 promising not to pursue anyone connected with Epstein. What do you think?
They actually have a very strong argument, a compelling argument that they're going to assert on behalf of Prince Andrew. And an agreement like this, a settlement agreement like this, is not at all unusual. As a matter of fact, in most civil cases, when they are settled, the defendant, the person who's being sued, is always afraid that there'll be other suits that will be coming out of the same incident. So if they can, they negotiate an agreement like this that, hey, this is the end of the case if we're going to pay you this amount of money. They paid her $500,000 apparently back in 2009, I believe it was, when the settlement agreement was made.
Okay, so this is the exact language. I'm going to read it to our viewers. Giuffre signed the deal in which he agreed to remise, release, acquit, satisfy, and forever discharge the said second parties and any other person or entity who could have been included as a potential defendant from all and all manner of action and actions of Virginia Roberts, that was her name at the time, including state or federal cause and causes of action. Does that include civil suits?
Oh, yes, that would most definitely. And that is really aimed at civil suits because you cannot contract away criminal charges. That would be obstruction of justice if you did that. So this is intended to apply to civil cases. But here's the argument that her attorneys are going to make. They're going to say that the case against Prince Andrew is different than the case against Epstein. And accordingly, it could not have appropriately been brought as part of this settlement agreement, and hence it's not covered. That's what.
Pause here for a second. So this is something that I always question. We wanted to point out, right? Like Prince Andrew should have been brought up on criminal charges, right? Not just this civil suit. Ghislaine Maxwell was brought up on criminal charges. Epstein brought up on criminal charges, and then he disappears. I think we all know about that. And then, but Prince Andrew just seemed to skirt on by. And I've always saw it this way. People say, well, if there's a civil suit and if the victim wins the civil suit, then everyone knows that the accused is guilty. Not necessarily. But he was not brought up on these criminal charges. That's something to hold on to that.
What the lawyers will be arguing about from a technical standpoint. Now, of course, her attorneys will be Prince Andrew's attorneys will be saying, hey, that's absurd. He could have been named as a co-defendant in the case, just as Maxwell was named as a co-defendant in the case.
Sure. What if Ghislaine Maxwell, who was found guilty on 5 of 6 charges against her, decides, for instance, to talk about anything involving Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre? Could that affect Giuffre's civil suit against Prince Andrew despite the 2009 settlement that she signed?
I don't think it would affect Giuffre's civil suit. It would, of course, mean that he could be charged possibly with criminal charges, depending upon, of course, what Maxwell has to say. You know, there are statute of limitations issues here in this case, and there are also issues with respect to some of the sexual conduct that's alleged, that the prince is alleged to have engaged in, was in London, and the laws are different in England than they are in the United States with respect to statutes of limitations and so forth.
Sure. And now,
and we'll go ahead and pause it there. Now, I do want to go ahead and say this about Prince Andrew. From what I understand, this wasn't the first. From what I understand, word on the street is that the Virginia case with Prince Andrew wasn't like this was the first time that Prince Andrew had been accused of maybe being with someone who is underage. From what I understand and from what I read, Prince Andrew was kind of known for going after or targeting girls that were underage. This just happens to be the one that came forward from what I read. Now, I wanted to give you a flashback about that so you have an understanding of who Virginia Giuffre is, because now something wild and crazy happened. And the moment I heard this story, people said to me, oh my God, it's Hillary again. And I think you'll see why. So check this out. Just the other day, Epstein and Prince Andrew accuser says she has days to live after a bus crash. So I think a lot of people saw this and were like, what is happening here? What happened here? So she wrote on social media, she has gone into kidney renal failure. I'll show you the actual post so you can see it for yourself. They've given me 4 days to live. Now let's get into the accident, right? So Virginia, who is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, who once alleged she was sexually trafficked to Britain's Prince Andrew, says she has just days to live after being involved in a vehicle accident. Let's go ahead and take a look at that statement from her here. This is her Instagram. And here's a picture here. Obviously, that looks like a hospital bed to me. You can see here's the rail, the guard rail on the hospital bed that you see if you've ever been in a hospital or been next to a hospital bed. This is what she said. So check this out. This year has been the worst to start a new year, but I won't bore anyone with the details. But I think it's important to note that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers as we were slowing for a turn, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time. But you know what they say about wishes? In one hand, shit in one hand and wish in the other. And I guarantee it's still going to be shit at the end of the day. Thank you all for being the wonderful people of the world and for being a great part of my life. God bless you all, Virginia. Yeah, man. Weird, right? Kind of spooky posts there. But what she posted there doesn't line up with what the accident report says. When we look at what the accident report says, and this is the part that I think threw people into a tizzy here. It goes on to say, her father, Sky Roberts, commented on the post and said, Virginia, my daughter, I love you and am praying for you to get the correct treatment to live a long and healthy life. If there is anything in this world I can do to help you, please let me know. My spirit is with you and holding your hand. Now, in a statement, Giuffre's representative said that she had been in a serious car accident and is receiving medical care in the hospital. She greatly appreciates the support and well wishes people are sending. Now, if you were like me, when you first heard about this accident, first thing I said is, uh-oh, somebody is trying to take out Virginia. That's the first thing I thought. Somebody is trying to take Virginia out. But listen to the report from the accident. Listen to this. Pull up here a little bit. A social media post from 4 weeks ago suggests that Giuffre was in Perth in early March. Western Australia police said on Tuesday there was a report of a minor crash between a school bus and a car in Nergaby, north of Perth, on March 24th at about 3 p.m. So how do you end up in the hospital from a minor crash? Minor. Listen to this part. There's more. It goes on to say the collision was reported by the bus driver the following day. The car sustained approximately $2,000 worth of damage. There were no reported injuries as a result of the crash. There were no reported injuries as a result of the crash. So what's up, man? What's happening here? If there were no injuries, why does Virginia say that she was injured in this accident and that she's in the hospital fighting for her life? Is this an episode of Black Mirror? Let's go on. WA police confirmed a 41-year-old woman was in the car. The Guardian understands that Giuffre presented to a Perth Hospital Emergency Department. That was on Tuesday, April 1st. Giuffre had been living in a home in Ocean Reef. This is a north suburb of Perth with her husband, Robert Giuffre, who purchased the property in late 2020. So does that sound a little bit odd to you guys? A minor accident, but she ended up in the hospital? Who's to blame? And now there's more information, and this is where it gets even more weird. Now Giuffre is claiming this part. Jeffrey Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre offers new details after claiming she had just days to live after the bus crash. So let's get into this. This is the update. Virginia offered more details about the horror bus crash that she claims left her with just 4 days to live. A statement from Giuffre's spokesperson said to dispute the sex trafficking victim's assertion on Instagram Sunday that she was near death. Her spokesperson said that the mother of 3 was in serious condition at an Australian hospital. The new details came after police in Western Australia, where the US-born Giuffre lives, said there were no reported injuries in the March 24th crash between Giuffre's car and a school bus outside Perth. So, excuse me. No reported injuries. Now her spokesperson is saying disregard the post that she made on Instagram. So if I were to make an educated guess here, it seems like to me she's trying to disappear. It seems like to me she's trying to go away. And maybe she thought I can use the accident and say, yes, because I was in an accident, and I can say, uh-oh, I'm seriously injured from this accident. I don't know if I'm going to make it. But it sounds like to me that Virginia is trying to disappear. It goes on to say here, let's go on. The new details came after, we did the reported injuries, and then there's the picture there. However, a spokesperson for Giuffre has insisted that she was forced to go to the hospital after her condition worsened several days after the crash. But they said there were no reported injuries. Now, from my experience, you're always kind of told, like, if you get into a car accident, you should still go get checked out. But there's a difference between going and getting checked out and saying, I have 4 days to live. Like, there's a big difference there. And I've been in car accidents as well, right? So it didn't make sense. But listen to this. Virginia was banged up, bruised, and returned home. Following the collision, the spokesperson told Giuffre told the Post, the police did not have the resources to come to the scene of the accident at the time. They asked if anyone was injured and suggested that if they were, they should make their way to the hospital. So you guys find this to be a little bit strange? Now let's go back to the picture. Does she look okay to you? She don't look okay to me. So if there were no injuries after the crash, what put her in this state? Where she said kidney failure. What put her in this state? These people, the victims, we don't know that they will ever really be safe. We really don't. They came forward, and that in itself is a risk. The school bus driver had a bus full of distraught children and left the scene to get them back, saying he would file a police report, which he did later. Concerning her Instagram post, Virginia thought that she had posted on her private Facebook page. The statement went on. I want to explain this to people who don't use either. Facebook and Instagram is connected. And sometimes if you're posting on Facebook, you can accidentally this will also post on Instagram. Or if you're posting on Instagram, it can accidentally also post on Facebook if you're not paying close attention. So I kind of hate that merger between the two, by the way. But it wasn't something she wanted everyone to see. Apparently, she thought she was posting this on her private Facebook page. So only the people who have access to that would see that, right? Now, listen to this. Today, she remains in serious condition while receiving medical care. Giuffre, whose bombshell allegations that she had sex with Prince Andrew when she was underage, yada, yada, claimed she had just a few days to live after suffering kidney failure. Alongside of a picture of her apparently laying in a hospital bed, which you guys saw that. There's a picture of her there. So compare that to the picture of her in the hospital bed. So I think we all saw that. And then it goes into the statement that she left. They go on to say she's in really bad shape. She's very depressed. There's everything else she's been going through with a divorce and not being able to see her kids. So there's a little bit more to this story. And she says she misses her kids. So that tells you that she obviously apparently was not with her children at that point in time. This story is really strange. And you guys feel free to let me know what you think in the chat. I find this story to be very odd. And since there were no major injuries in the accident, what happened to Virginia Giuffre? Because her spokesperson is still confirming she is in the hospital. So what happened? Did someone come after her? Was she trying to end it all? You know, when people come forward against powerful people, that it's a huge risk. This is why a lot of times people don't do it. It's a big risk. It's not that you just have to deal with the trial. You just have to deal with the media. You can be a target, and your family can also be a target for the rest of your life. This is why a lot of times people don't speak up. And powerful people know this. Powerful people know that they can get away with shit. Strange story. Strange times. Who's to blame? Is it Virginia? Did Virginia try to do this to herself? Or is someone else after her? Let's go to some of the comments here. All right. Shout out to Aaron Taylor for becoming a new member. Give Aaron a big whoop whoop in the house. Miss Kiwi says, I didn't think Virginia and others that spoke out about underage ST would be living long. Yeah, see, Virginia knows, Miss Kiwi knows. Yeah, I mean, you're coming out against powerful people. Thank you, New York. Look at the left side of her face. Is that bus right-handed? Please show that pic again and tell me what's up. Look at the left side of her face. Yeah, I know. I don't know, dude. I don't know. We may never know the full truth, but it's interesting. And thank you, None of Your Business. The dates are April 1st. Is that an April Fool's trick? No. I mean, today is April 1st in the US. This story came out yesterday. So I guess it would have been, I don't know, April 1st there, but I don't think this is April Fool's, not from what I've read. That would be a horrible April Fool's joke, by the way. Let's get the comments on Rumble, Eric. Woohoo! Thank you, Goo. Under common law, at least in Canada, I think the US and definitely the UK has it. A contract would become void if it involves an illegal act. This is a definite. And thank you for this one. As odd as Princess Diana getting killed in a car crash inside a tunnel and the limo driver happens to be drunk. Thank you for this one as well. Lastly, Virginia had medical issues regarding her kidneys 2 years ago on Galloway Moat's interview, but not looking that bad. Wow. Crazy times, man. I don't know, you guys. You never know what's happening. Can we go to part 2, Eric? Thank you. Never know what's going on, guys. Marianne says whatever comes out in her revelations will give a better indicator about what's going on. Perhaps someone wants her to change her story, carted away from the accident, roughed up with a choice. Another possibility. Another one. Okay. And now it's time to get a little bit comical, but not too comical. Okay. Time to get a little bit of comical. Believe it or not, Donald Trump is entertaining running for a third term. Now, I know what you may be thinking, that that's impossible. No way in hell that can happen. But actually, it appears there is a loophole and this could actually happen. And I want to brace you and prepare you for this. I personally don't think he's going to do this, but it is something I think people need to know about the 22nd Amendment and about the 12th Amendment. Now, here's where this comes from. I don't know if you guys saw this. Crazy times we're living in. Trump said he was not joking about the possibility of a third term. Check this out.
President Trump is now floating the idea of running for a third term in some of his strongest comments yet. The president reportedly told Meet the Press anchor Kristen Welker that he wasn't joking when asked about the possibility, and he said that there were ways around the constitutional term limits on the presidency. President Trump is also threatening tariffs on Russia over Vladimir Putin's recent comments about President Zelensky. Here's ABC's senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Tonight, President Trump reportedly says he's considering ways to serve a third term, a move that would require breaching the two-term limit outlined in the Constitution. The president telling NBC's Kristen Welker, quote, "There are methods which you could do it," when asked to clarify, saying, "I'm not joking," later adding, "It's far too early to think about it." But the president and his allies have been floating the idea for months.
I've raised a lot of money for the next race that I assume I can't use for myself, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again?
Amending the Constitution for Trump to run a third term would be extremely difficult, first requiring 2/3 approval by Congress and then ratification by 38 states. With the president now just days away from imposing tariffs on foreign cars and auto parts, Trump now threatening even more on Russian oil. The president delivering his harshest criticism yet of Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he's, quote, very angry with him for attacking the credibility of Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Putin on Friday claiming Zelensky lacks the legitimacy to sign a peace deal. Trump himself has criticized the Ukrainian president, falsely calling him a dictator.
He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished?
But now Trump is changing his tune. The president reportedly saying, if a peace deal isn't made, and if I think it was Russia's fault, I'm going to put secondary sanctions on Russia.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of trolling that's happening with Donald Trump. It's kind of like a lot of these threats. Now, not all of it. Some of these things I do think he's serious about. Like, right? Like, we're going to get into the Gaza stuff a little bit later on Thursday about the new plan, about what's happening with that, what Israel is actively doing. But the third term, I personally don't think he's going to try to do that. But some people want him to do that. And I think that may have been why he said it. But for the purpose of this conversation, the reason why I wanted to cover this story is because I do want you to know that this is possible. And I think we really need to dive into this. What does the 22nd Amendment say? And what does the 12th Amendment say? So let's take that journey. Let's dive on in there. I also don't think Trump would win again in 2028. I really don't think that he would. Even some of the people. It's interesting, man. I got friends of all different types, right? I got friends from all different political ideologies. Even some of the people that I know that voted for Donald Trump are not happy with him right now, right? Now, these are people that are not like MAGA Trumper supporters per se. They're just people that are Republican and they vote Republican. They just back their party. Just like people who may not have been happy with Kamala Harris, but they're Democrats, so they just vote for the Democrat candidate, like they're backing their party, that type of thing. But some of the people I know that voted for him have reached out to me. They reached out to me and they said, can I just vent? I'm like, go for it. And they've been venting about how frustrated they are and etc. And I could have easily said, I told you so. But I was like, that's probably not the best thing to say at that moment. And I'll say this to everybody else, too. For the people who are like, oh, you guys who decided to support Jill Stein, first of all, learn how to do math, because math shows that Jill Stein's votes added to Kamala's votes still shows that Kamala loses. In fact, the math shows that every third party and independent candidate, if you take her votes and give them to Kamala Harris still loses. So when you come to people and you say things like, I told you guys, so I told you so. That's why you should have voted this way, that really does not help you win. It sure as hell don't change my mind. It actually makes me kind of angry with you. So that type of thing. But yeah, people have contacted me and they've been kind of venting. People who I know who voted for Kamala have also reached out to me and they're venting and they're so pissed that Kamala couldn't make this work. They're so pissed that the Democrats were that bad that they couldn't beat him again. So these are things that people have said to me behind the scenes that they're not willing to say publicly. And there's a lot of that going around. We can talk about that on call-in when we get into that. But this is how it could actually happen. And I want people to understand, again, what does the 22nd Amendment say and what does the 12th Amendment say? Let's get into that here.
President Trump's second term has barely started, and he's already floating the possibility of a third one, even though the U.S. Constitution forbids it. Trump telling NBC News this weekend, quote, there are methods by which he could do it, and that he's, quote, not joking. Here's how South Carolina Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn is responding to it.
Well, I don't think he's joking at all. This man does not plan to leave this White House. All of this is about suspending, if not eliminating, the Constitution of the United States. And that's the track we're on. And I think people better get serious about this. When he says he's not joking about throwing away the Constitution, which is what he'll have to do in order to have a third term, and we are not going to rise up in opposition to that, I think it's time for us all to wake up.
We're joined now by CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. And Ellie, the 22nd Amendment is very clear. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice.
Pause. First of all, of course, they would have to get Clyburn on here, right? Of course, Jim Clyburn would show up. Why not, right? Read this, folks. 22nd Amendment of the Constitution. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Keyword elected. And no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected, president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. But listen to the loophole. Check this out.
Where is this wiggle room that Trump is seeing?
Well, Bree, you're exactly right. Lawyers love wiggle room and escape hatches. And here they're looking at the word elected. So here's the argument. It's fringy, but the 22nd Amendment says nobody should be elected president more than twice. Well, the theory is, well, then maybe what Donald Trump or any two-term president can do is run as vice president with, let's say, J.D. Vance at the top of the ticket. If they win, J.D. Vance resigns, Donald Trump becomes president. The argument is that, well, that wouldn't be getting elected. That would be becoming president through the line of succession, ascending to the presidency. So now the biggest problem with this, of course, though, is earlier in the Constitution. The 12th Amendment tells us that any person who's ineligible to be president is also ineligible to be vice president. So you would think that ends the question. That seems pretty straightforward. There is a very fringy, extreme school of thought that the 12th Amendment doesn't quite close the door on this, but I think those advocates are trying to thread a needle that is not threadable.
A little too cute by half there.
So basically, they're trying to work around the wording of the 22nd Amendment and the 12th Amendment, right? But they're also, if you look at the 12th Amendment, it also says that you can't run as VP either. But if he were to find some way to kind of change that, then yeah, that could, change. That could greatly change things. I don't think that's going to happen. I think a federal judge would come and strike that down, just like federal judges have stricken down like other things that Trump has tried to implement. But I think it's a big troll. How old is Donald Trump right now at this point? Like, I think people, it's time for a younger generation. I really do. And I don't mean like young, but I think it's time to move on towards like a new leadership, a new something. No more Bushes, no more Clintons, no more Trumps, no more Obama. Like, I don't want no dynasties, no more Pelosi family, no Obama family, none of that. I think we just need like new, fresh energy. And by the way, no Pelosi family, that includes Gavin Newsom as well, because he's still related to her by marriage. So I mean, extended family too. Okay. I think you just need new like energy and new, something just fresh, something new. But no, I don't think that Donald Trump will run for president again. It's 2025. That would be 2028. I mean, come on. It's like the same like people still saying like they want Bernie to run. I'm like, Bernie's 83 years old. Like, come on, man. Let's stop with the mess.
Trump said, in addition to the J.D. Vance option, there are others too. That's a quote. What are they?
Well, the most straightforward option, it's completely unrealistic, but we can always amend the Constitution. I mean, we have done that 27 times in our history. It's virtually impossible in today's political landscape. In order to amend the Constitution, there's two ways to do it. One, we can convene a series of statewide constitutional conventions. That's never happened. That's not going to happen. Two, maybe equally as unlikely, you would have to get a 2/3 vote in the House of Representatives, a 2/3 vote in the U.S. Senate, and then 3/4 of the states, 38 of the 50 states would have to ratify that. So in theory, you could do that, but there's a 0.00% chance of that happening in reality.
And I mean, just talk about why this is an important tradition that has been codified in the Constitution. This is something that makes America quite extraordinary.
Well, and that's exactly why I think these end runs, playing with the word elected or trying to argue the 12th Amendment doesn't apply somehow. That's why I think they're disingenuous and dangerous. Part of what we have to do when we look at the Constitution is look at the spirit, look at the intent. I mean, George Washington stepped down after 2 terms because he understood we don't want a king. The reason we ratified the 22nd Amendment in 1951 after FDR had served 4 consecutive terms is we didn't want that. So you're right. I think norms are really important here, and that's part of what's different. Look, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama both served 2 terms. Neither of them, and so did George W. Bush, none of them ever in any serious way spoke about, considered, gave any life to the possibility of a 3rd term, and Donald Trump's doing it differently.
Let me interject here for just a moment, if that's okay. I was just thinking about what he said about, these amending the Constitution and all these different things. And I think what I said before, the thing that really frustrates me the most about Trump's presidency is that whether we agree with what he has chosen to do with his power, he has shown us what the president can get done. And then you look back at how little Biden was willing to do, how little Obama was willing to do, how little Bill Clinton was willing to do for the working class. Well, Bill Clinton did increase the minimum wage, but still, you look back and you're just like, man, why they could have done more, but they didn't want to. And that's how you end up here. So who's to blame for this? Who's to blame for the fact that Trump can even troll about it? Yeah, maybe I can run for a 3rd term. Who's to blame for that? You know how you get in this position? When the so-called opposition to the current party that's in power isn't really opposition. When the so-called opposition to the current party in power isn't really so-called opposition. Because you see, when Kamala Harris decides to get along with Liz Cheney, when Joe Biden implements genocide, when Kamala doesn't break from Biden on at least that issue, when you go along with what the neocons want, when you're not willing to have an agenda that is a populist message for the working class people, you're not really in opposition. Difference is you might be better on some social issues, but economically, you're not really in opposition anymore. You're not even in opposition when it comes to war. That's how you get here. That's how you even get. That's what I'm saying. It makes no sense to me. Donald Trump shouldn't even win again. The fact that he lost in 2020, how you come back and win again? Unless the other administration was that bad. It's an embarrassment. And although you see AOC and Bernie Sanders out there right now fighting like that, doing that oligarchy fight tour or whatever, why is it just 2 people? And Ro Khanna's holding like town halls or whatever. And I told you guys before, this is to funnel things back into the Democratic Party, even though Bernie said people should also run as independent. The donation links to Act Blue. You look it up, you go to donate, it's Act Blue. It's going back to the Democratic Party. But the thing is, why is it just those people? There's no real opposition. And that's how someone like Donald Trump can even entertain it. That's how someone like Donald Trump can say, hey, maybe I might run a third term. Oh, actually, we can do this and we can do that. That's how he gets to that point. Because the Democratic Party, they weren't fighters. They were too busy trying to figure out how to get along with the Republicans instead of fighting against. I mean, if we were boxing and we were in a ring right now, basically the Democratic Party got knocked the fuck out. That's how you get there. It's crazy. Crazy when you think about it. Crazy stuff. But I think he's trolling. I don't think he's going to run a third term, but I wanted you to see that there is possible loopholes where he could. Let's go to the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Good question. Does the 12th Amendment also restrict speaker and cabinet positions? I'm not certain. I do know that you don't even have to be in Congress to be nominated as Speaker of the House. That was something I learned during that whole Kevin McCarthy resistance for Speaker, that you don't even have to be a member of Congress to be nominated for Speaker. So it's just things that you learn along the way, you guys. Angelique said, we're never getting rid of him. Jamie said the Trumpster needs to go in the dumpster. Skylar says Trump is 192. He'll be lucky to make it until the end of his term. 192. Thank you, Miss Ritchie. Trump administration treats us all like a cat with a laser pointer. Look here, now there, now over there. All silly distractions to cover this is Biden 2.0. Thank you, Skylar. Blaming third-party voters for Kamala Harris's loss helps her base cope. It's like their support animal. Interesting. Thank you, Roger, for the super chat. Sabrina actually didn't do and I told you so. I don't do I told you so with votes. I don't tell my friends that I told you so. No, I just, people don't like to hear that. Miss Kiwi. Oh, Sabrina and Eric, speaking of math, Steve Kornacki, stats and polls guy, is leaving MSNBC. It was announced today. Wow, I'm surprised he's leaving, but they're trying to have new changes over there and everything. And maybe for Steve, he just wants to do something different. They're going to have to find another guy in khakis. Thank you, Courtney. The hell with Clyburn and those stale ass fish fries. Thank you. None of your business. The Speaker of the House in Vance and new Vice D1 ETBPR. I don't know what you mean there, but thank you. Thank you. Where's the love? These musty old folks gotta go. I'm so done. Thank you, Miss Ritchie. The fact that there's no real opposition to Trump proves corporate Dems are also profiting from Trump's agenda. Same rotten fruitcake, new wrapping. That's a good point, Miss Ritchie. Okay. And now we're getting to our final story. I've done really great on time. Yay. We will do call in tonight after the show. Again, the theme is who is to blame? And you're going to ask yourself that question with this story. There is a new book that was released on Tuesday, April 1st. And no, it's not an April Fool's joke. That is revealing what went down during the pass the torch moment between Biden and Kamala Harris and how much Obama was involved. And interestingly enough, this book, which is called Fight, also explains that Barack Obama had someone else in mind for the job. Now, before we get into that, I want to take you back to this article here during Kamala's campaign that kind of gave people a warning that something was going on. This was July 24th of 2024. Obama doesn't believe Kamala Harris can beat Trump, which is why he hasn't endorsed her, sources say. Before this article was released, I did a show discussing how people thought it was strange that Obama hadn't endorsed her yet at that time. And I predicted he probably didn't endorse her because he doesn't think that she can beat Donald Trump. Then this article came out. So it turns out I was right about that. We'll go into this a little bit, and then we're going to get into that book that was released. Following President Biden's shocking exit from the race on Sunday and his immediate endorsement of the vice president, most of the Democratic elite have been quick to rally behind Harris, but Obama is a notable exception. Obama is very upset because he knows she can't win. The Biden family source told the Post. So that was just a reminder there. He knew she couldn't win. That wasn't supposed to be revealed publicly, apparently. But now this new book that just came out is definitely not going to make Barack Obama happy. He's very big on his legacy. He's always talking about this. Like, he cares more about how he will be remembered and what people will think about him. So that's a big deal to Barack Obama. And so this book is not going to benefit his legacy. Now, the authors of this book, they are two journalists. They have been on MSNBC. They've been on The Hill Rising. They were on Breaking Points. They are making the rounds. Let's get into part of that conversation on MSNBC. They have a lot to say. Again, the name of the book is called Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, and it is now officially on sale. Let's get into this here. This is Jonathan Allen.
So President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention or mini primary leading to an open convention.
Heard it here first, folks. Barack Obama did not want Kamala Harris to be the nominee, but he also didn't want Joe Biden to be the nominee. Everything that you saw out on that stage, whether it was Obama speaking at Kamala rallies or the DNC convention, all of it was fake. These people are actors. Always said if politics don't work out for them, they can just star in the movies. They're actors. And I think Obama got an Oscar there because he sure as hell acted like he wanted her to win and he wanted her there. And I go back to the moment when Barack Obama said to the room of black men, the problem is you brothers. You're not coming out to support her the way that you came out to support me. That was all an act. He didn't even want her there. Fake it, fake, fake. Let's go on more.
Did not have faith in her ability to win the election. So, and as it turned out, she didn't win, but he was really working against her. In one moment, he had set up a phone call with Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina on the day that Joe Biden handed off the baton to Kamala Harris. And Obama had set up a call with Clyburn for like 5:30 that afternoon. And Clyburn thought to himself, this guy's going to try to rope me into the open convention thing. I better get my endorsement of Harris out there fast so that this is a short conversation.
Wow.
So that's and when Harris talked to Obama on the day that Biden handed off to her, Obama was unwilling to give his endorsement then.
Wow.
I'm sorry, what? So now you're starting to hear this is where Jim Clyburn comes into play. Now you find out that the reason why Jim Clyburn rushed to endorse Kamala Harris is because he didn't want Barack Obama to convince him to join him with the idea of the open primary. So he rushes to endorse Kamala Harris because he didn't want to get roped up in that. Kamala Harris then contacts Barack Obama asking for endorsement, and he said, "What? Let's go back. What? See, now it's all coming back. Protect these people. Protect these people."
First talked to Obama on the day that Biden handed off to her. Obama was unwilling to give his endorsement then.
Wow. You know,
when she spoke to Obama the day that Biden contacted her and said, "I'm, gonna nominate you, kid. It's gonna be you, kid." You guys know how Joe Biden talks. She spoke to Obama then. And according to this book, Barack Obama did not want to give Kamala Harris his endorsement at that time. How would you guys feel? Is that not a slap in the face? Because if he wasn't ready to give you his endorsement, that tells you right then and there, you know, he don't believe in you. You know that he doesn't think that you were ready. You know he didn't want your ass. Good question, MC. MC said, so why did she run? I think part of it could be optics. Like, it would look bad if she decided not to. People would ask questions. Why are you skipping over the VP? All these kinds of things. But I think she still could have gone through like the open, you know, having like an open primary. She still could have gone through that. Very funny saying that because there were people who were running against Joe Biden. There, RFK Jr. before he left the Democratic Party, RFK, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, they were all running against Joe Biden. And if they would have had a real primary and had a debate, they wouldn't have ended up in that situation. Who knows? Hell, they probably could have won. But that was what they decided to do. But he didn't want her.
Amy, we always look back in retrospect and think things were a certain way, just because it's the way the media at the time defined it. You know, I remember after Biden's shockingly bad presidential debate, that's when like the history books were starting, you know, you could just see that was going to be the reason why he was pushed out of the race and he was doing badly. But I remember talking to a reporter 3 days before the primary, before the debate, and we were talking about how Biden was starting to fall behind in Minnesota, that Virginia was getting really tight, uncomfortably tight, and Democrats were afraid Biden would even lose New Hampshire. These Democratic states were starting to go, sort of even. And we both said to each other, the funny thing is, like, no matter how Biden does in this debate, people are going to blame the debate for the way the polls are already breaking before the debate, right?
Yeah, exactly, Joe. And that's exactly why his advisors felt the need to jump in and kind of switch up the narrative. They knew they were looking at polling. He was looking at polling, and they knew that he was losing. And so they needed to do something, even though there was an advisor, Anita Dunn, who was against it at first. Nancy Pelosi went to Biden and said, you don't need to debate him. Why would you sink to Trump's level and debate him? So there were people who didn't want to debate him. And then, of course, they felt the need to. So there he was. But, we take you inside the book. And what's fascinating is that none of these leaders are gathered together. We have Nancy Pelosi sitting in her living room alone watching. We have Jim Clyburn, who John just mentioned, sitting alone, having a drink. And meanwhile, as the debate is unfolding, their phones are blowing up. And that is when everything unfolds and unravels from there, and the 24 days continue.
And so, Jonathan, in some ways, the debate that night spilled out into the open the concerns that a lot of Democrats had had privately about Joe Biden and his ability to carry out another term, and that he was slipping and all the other things that became apparent at the debate. So there has been reporting in the last several months from a lot of people and saying, I told you so. And Democrats in January of 2023 privately talking about encouraging him not to run for re-election. What did you find? How serious were those challenges internally among Democrats? And was it because they thought he was simply too old?
I'm sorry, but a lot of this I have to laugh at, to be honest with you, because they refuse to have a real primary. They refuse to allow the people who were actively running against Joe Biden to have a debate. And I think if the American people would have seen the other candidates on the debate stage running against Joe Biden wouldn't have been the nominee. Unless, of course, the DNC would have moved things around. You know how they like to fix things. But I don't think he would have been. Like, that's the thing, the point. Like, this happened to the Democratic Party because you guys tried to cheat. As usual, you tried to keep things, let's just maintain the status quo. Let's just pretend these other nominees, these other candidates don't exist. So this is called karma. That's what this is. It's karma. By the way, I want to remind everybody that Kamala Harris wasn't even supposed to be. The original running mate that Joe Biden wanted was Amy Klobuchar. Now, don't get excited. She cuckoo too. She has thrown things at staff members. She's a little wackadoodle. She also was not against stopping, did not support Stop Line 3. That was another thing. She's out there in Minnesota. Obviously, yes, that does impact like her state. So she's just a status quo cookie cutter as well too. But what that tells you is that Joe Biden was told to pick Kamala Harris. He was told to pick her. He didn't really want, she wasn't his first choice. You know, it's like going on a date with someone and then, you know, later on they kind of tell you, well, when I met you that night, you know, I actually had already asked out somebody else. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just stuff like that, knowing you weren't the first choice. So just keep that in mind. Let's go on a little bit more here.
So the challenges were not articulated that much. There was some of that, right? The Biden White House got polling from Steve Shale down in Florida that basically said the age issue is almost insurmountable for Biden, and Shale's a longtime Biden supporter. Somebody tried to get him into the race in 2016. It was, you know, that was out of love, not out of spite. But I think, I would just say, in addition to that, people thought this was a 5-alarm fire. Some of the people thought this was a 5-alarm fire. Most voters, most donors did. For some of the leadership of the Democratic Party, the debate was an opportunity to try to move Joe Biden out, which they'd wanted to do. And just one last thing I would say. In this book, I think what Democrats are going to find, what independents are going to find, and what some Republicans are going to find is what the next election looks like, what 2028 looks like, what they need to look for in their leaders, and what they need to demand from politicians in order to get an honest assessment of what's going on. I think most voters didn't know where that race stood when the debate happened, and they were told over and over and over again that Kamala Harris was poised to win at the end, and they were shocked when that wasn't the case.
So, Amy, let's indeed move to
shocked when that wasn't the case. So I think he brought up a good point that independents, Republicans, and I think Democrats may want to read that book too, because people kind of want to know, like, okay, what else? What happened here? What happened? What was going on? What else was going on behind the scenes? I think people do want to know. I just wanted to see if there's one more part here that I wanted to play as well.
the general election, and two moments take us behind the scenes on them that I think were inflection points. One, when Vice President Harris went on The View and said that she wouldn't do anything different than President Biden. I know the Trump team was celebratory about that. And then also you got some new reporting from Bill Clinton, the former president, talking about what he shorthanded as the trans ad, which we have discussed here was very harmful to Democrats and played in Pennsylvania and other swing states. Talk to us about what he had to say.
Well, Bill Clinton is sitting there watching football games on Sunday, seeing this trans ad appear again and again and again. At the same time, he's working rope lines. He's talking to voters. He's trying to find out, take the temperature, as Bill Clinton does. And he's hearing from people that they are not happy with what is happening. They want the campaign to respond to the trans ad. It is going unresponded, and he picks up the phone and is trying to call everyone he can. And he calls Jen O'Malley Dillon in one scene that we have in the book. He's sitting in a hotel room in California, and he dials her up and he says, "Listen, I'm hearing this. You guys need to fix this." And he's got a good finger on the pulse usually. This is something Bill Clinton does. And Bill Clinton was told that the data didn't indicate that they were okay. And so I think there was a lot of concern, obviously, brewing behind the scenes that this ad was killing them.
Rev, that ad.
So here's another thing that we're seeing. There does also seem to be some type of a split happening within the Democratic Party, where some feel as though the trans issue is not helping Democrats. And some Democrats feel like, well, no, this is helping us. You're starting to see that split. You saw Gavin Newsom. Now, all of a sudden, he feels differently about that particular issue, and he's getting like crap for that, right? Seth Moulton, Congressman from my state, Massachusetts, also has now come out against that. Now he's getting crap for that. So you guys notice like the split that's happening here. There's the Democratic Party is, people say it's a big tent. Sometimes a big tent isn't always the best thing. And that's why I said, I really do believe had we started something in 2016 after they cheated Bernie, the DNC cheated Bernie, I really do believe that if there were a separate party for progressive policies, it would probably be really thriving by now. Because that was 2016 and it's now 2025. I really do believe that. So I don't know. I mean, it's so many different things now. Like now you look back and you look at what could have been done and what people are asking to get done. And some people feel that it's a little, too late for that now. But the reality is it could have been done. So now you end up with this issue. And then there's a little bit more because like I said, they're doing a podcast tour. So they're going on to different shows. They're not going to tell you everything that's in the book. But they also went on to Chris Cuomo's show. Listen to a little bit here as well.
A new book comes out tomorrow called Fight: Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. Details the drama unfolding behind the scenes in the last year's presidential election. One of the authors, Amy Parnes, joins me now. Congratulations on the book. So why do you want people to read the book? The first sell is the shock that the ticket Walz and Harris felt on election night. What do you know?
Listen to this.
Well, we know that they were shocked, completely surprised by the events that unfolded on election night. They thought they were going to win. And, when they were told that they were losing in the final hours and that they had lost, there was complete silence and shock. And they were just dumbfounded by what was happening. But Chris, I think people should read this book because John and I are journalists in the truest sense. We call balls and strikes. We are not one-sided. This is a book that Democrats can learn from. This is a book that Republicans will enjoy because you can watch the train wreck. Everyone gains from reading this book.
I like the sell. The role of Biden, Amy, there are two schools. One is he was resistant to the change and stayed resistant throughout. The second was he was resistant to the change, and then he said, all right, I'm going out, but it's going to be Harris, and that he didn't want a primary. What did you find out?
Yeah. Well, so we know that there is a secret meeting going on in the final minutes before President Biden drops out at the time. It's at the Naval Observatory. It's in Kamala Harris's pool house there. Her advisors, her closest advisors are gathered and they're talking about what happens when and if Joe Biden drops out. We find out that he does drop out there and one of her aides rushes in to be with her. Biden doesn't want to immediately endorse her. He wants to kind of let the moment sink in and then endorse her a couple of days later. And she says, no, I need your endorsement right now.
That part right there, that's another part that we were not privy to. When Kamala Harris talked about the story and when Joe Biden was interviewed and he talked about how this exchange went down, passing the torch over to her, both of them said that Joe contacted Kamala and said, I want you to be the nominee. I think it's time for me to, skedoodle, long story short. And I'm going to endorse him. When Kamala Harris had that interview, remember, she said that. And he offered me his endorsement. Turns out that's not really the way things went down. Turns out she had to ask him for it and he wasn't ready to give it to her. So now we know Biden didn't want to endorse her. Obama didn't want, we knew Obama did. Biden didn't want to endorse her. Obama didn't want to endorse her. And these are the types of things that going back to 2024 presidential election, had people had known this, Kamala Harris might have gotten more support. Think about that. If people knew that Biden and Obama were doing this behind the scenes, she may have gotten more support. I mean, this book came out anyway. So if people didn't know, they're going to know now. So when I ask you who's to blame, I want you to think about something for just a second. Those things happen with Obama and Biden. And throw Pelosi in there too. But at the end of the day, it was Kamala Harris's campaign. Kamala Harris could have went scorched earth. And if I was Kamala, this is what I would have done. If I was in that situation, here's what I would have done. Number one, I would have made it very clear and publicly known that they didn't want to endorse me. I don't give a damn. That's why you don't see me there. That's why they wouldn't have me there. I would have made it known. I'm sorry, but they don't want to give me their support. Hell, she might have gotten sympathy votes for that. Second thing I would have done. Number one, I would have definitely distanced myself from Joe Biden as much as possible. There was a reason why internal polls were showing that he was going to lose to Donald Trump and Donald Trump could win 400 electoral college votes. As much as possible. Definitely should have went a different direction on Gaza than Joe Biden was willing to go. Definitely should have had a working class agenda. All you had to do was look at the Bernie blueprint, and then I would have, obviously, you add reparations to that. 3, should have started campaigning in Black communities, since the Democratic Party, you can't win unless you have the Black vote. But no, she didn't want to do that. Didn't want to do that. And she lost the Black vote. That's why she lost. That's a big part of why. She got less support from Black voters than Hillary and Joe Biden. I told you guys, no Black agenda. Black voters are continuing to not show up to vote for these candidates. I'm not messing around when I say this. So that's another thing. And here's the other damn thing. If I were in that position, I would have contacted Jill Stein. I know they contacted Cornel West, but Jill Stein at that time with the Green Party, Jill Stein had more ballot access. I wouldn't have had sicked AOC on them to shame the Green Party or third party voters. I would have contacted Jill Stein and Cornel West and Claudia De La Cruz and tried to work with them and build a broader coalition. That's what I would have done. Not just, let's just pretend they're not around. Oh, hell no. I would have tried to work with them. Because you see, unlike Kamala, Jill Stein went to Dearborn, Michigan. Dr. West went to Dearborn, Michigan. They went there. You stayed away. So what Obama and Joe Biden did was wrong, fucked up. But honestly, it kind of reminds me like business is just cutthroat. That's how business can be. And politics is even worse. That's what it sounds like to me. That being said, if I was Kamala, I would have came forward all that ish. Let everybody know. Let them know. Could you imagine how people would have felt if they would have heard that Obama didn't want her? Ooh, that would have turned so differently. People mad at Obama anyway. But those are things that she could have done. And that's why I said you can't sit up here and blame the voters. Like, especially considering during the genocide, the people who obviously were going to get support from people who were very, very upset about what was happening in Gaza, Jill Stein won the Muslim vote. Now, that's a community that the Democratic Party won in 2020. And they somehow have to figure out how to get back. And I don't know how they're going to get that community back, considering the fact that you can't win Michigan without them. I mean, it's just common. Then there's Black men. You look at the numbers. A lot of Black women showed up. Not as many Black men as they did in 2020. Why didn't you go meet with Black? It's so weird to me. Like, in my mind, if I am in that position, I know where to go. That you can't blame on Obama. That you can't blame on Biden. Don't get me wrong. They still corrupt and sneaky as shit. But you can't blame them for everything. It's just common sense to me. Common damn sense. Look at where you start. Look at where you end up. But they didn't want her there. And in fact, what that book goes on to reveal is that Barack Obama wanted Gretchen Whitmer and Westmore. That's the ticket he wanted. The black governor of Maryland, who's raising taxes there, by the way. I got family and friends in Maryland. Hello. And Gretchen Whitmer, who talks really weird and looks like she's constipated. That's who he wanted to be the ticket. Obama thinks that would have worked. I don't think they would have won. Little bit more here. Things that could have been done.
Do you believe which story do you believe more? That that the Pelosi and the party said it has to be Harris, or that Biden wanted to pick who it would be?
I think that Pelosi and the party, they were very squeamish on Harris going in. We have reporting in the book that says he goes, she goes. I think they wanted, a lot of people wanted a primary, and but it was a little too late for that.
And that is kind of payback to the Democratic Party. She said a lot of people wanted a primary, but when you had the opportunity to have one, y'all shut it down. And you guys said that Biden is the candidate. This book, I think that everybody should check out. And no, I'm not sponsored by these people. Let me make very clear, I'm not sponsored by these people. None of them told me to promote this book. But I think regardless of your political ideology, maybe you should read that book, because it'll show you just how corrupt the damn system is, how it's so corrupt. They're doing the podcast tour to promote the book. So you can find them in a number of places. But I don't think that this book is going to look good for Obama. Who do you think is to blame? All right, let's go to that poll. Okay, here we go. This is interesting. Do you believe that RFK Jr. is being blackmailed? We have 1,663 votes. 46% say yes, 15% say no, 18% say maybe, and 21% say they're honestly not sure. Interesting. All right, guys, we are going to do call in tonight. So I am going to take a quick break. Eric's going to pop on and he's going to do the super chats. And then I'll be back and we'll head on over to call in.
All right, we'll do that thing. We got some chats. So this is the part of our show when we do a little adjustment here. When we are transitioning over to the what we call kind of the Zoom call-in. It used to be on call-in. Excuse me. Now we do it on Zoom, but it's our after show hangout where we encourage you all to come on and tell us what you think, or you can just listen in. Having the cameras on is optional. Sometimes a certain kitty cat makes an appearance. We'll see if she's willing. But in the meantime, let's look at these super chats, and we'll be giving you the link for the Zoom hangout when Sabby comes back. She's actually creating the Zoom room now. All right, let's see what we got in here. All right, thanks for this one, Michelle, who says, Ohio and Wyoming have 24 states for a constitutional convention. Okay. And thanks for the super chat, Jay Tolbert. So that condescending BS Obama said about us black men was for show. It's not surprising, but still infuriating. Yeah, I mean, I think what a book like that in the story, it shows is to my mind, well, firstly, for either of these parties, winning is secondary. Their first job is to serve their donor owners, the billionaires, military industrial complex, all those people who really run things using their money and corruption. That's how the billionaires run things. And the winning is secondary. And I think what you see happening with something like when Kamala, whether or not she was getting the nod and so forth, it's really like a palace intrigue. It's like, billionaire and elites infighting. I think that's what's really going on. And I think a book like that one, written by these insiders, may give you a taste of that, and you can kind of see, that there are these factions and they're fighting each other, but they're never going to dig into that next level of saying, well, these factions are run by billionaires who are each calling for their piece of the pie, and and that it's a whole huge corrupt system is what you won't get in that book, but that's what you can get here. Thanks for this super chat, Immortal Technique Man, who says, why do every politician sell out for Zionist Israel? And I would say it's part of the systemic selling out. It's for the money, and we've got Miriam Adelson and the billionaires out there for who Israel is a pet project, and so they inject a few $1 billion into the political system and get their pet project pushed up to the front and worked on. That's how the corrupt system runs, right? And thanks also for this one, Immortal, who says, as long as radical Zionist Jews run U.S. government, we're not free. And also, thanks for this one, all violence is wrong, Jewish supremacy is wrong. And thanks also for this one, Immortal says, I stand against Zionist Jewish terrorism in peace. And yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think if you're really going to, fix this in the system, you need to be, generalizing that to, billionaire corruption in general. Thanks for the super chat. Roger Meadows says, Jonathan, the same guy who wrote Shattered Inside HRC Doomed Campaign, revealing Hillary Clinton's team orchestrating birth of the Russia hoax to save face of losing to Trump. Yeah, I mean, you have these insider reporters who just, are part of the corrupt system, and they, and they get to have these books out of it. And thanks for the super chat. Where's the love? He says, a lot of circus acts under that big tent. I hear you. And thanks, Gene A. Who says, TERFs or women are 50% of the vote. And thanks also, Gene, who says, children cannot consent, save women in sports. Thanks for those. And here's Mr. New York Varsity Sports, who we'll probably see in the Zoom Hangout, I hope, who says, Obama is listed as a super delegate. Interested to see how he would have voted in an open primary. No one likes her. I hear you. And thanks for this, Courtney Smith. Word on the street is that Cuomo's brother might be in Grandma Killers 2 as an actor. And thanks for this one. Where's the love? Big mistake she made was wanting to continue the policies of a man whose mental faculties were in decline. And Rose Blossom, thanks for the super chat. Rose Blossom says, Sabby, amazing and always in beautiful shirts and blouses. I'm sure Sabrina appreciates that comment. And thanks for this one, Chris C., who says, Biden used Kamala as a form of atonement since he was always anti-Black. Per his Senate VP record, Kamala probably valued the money and status. Props, Sabby. And while I'm here, and thanks for those, everyone. And while I'm here, I just wanted to quickly hit a new 11 Demand Substack post that is just up as we speak. Here, let's show that. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There it is. All right. So this 11 Demand Substack post, which I'm going to put in the super chat, is so it's called so this comes from so it's called AI as a Tool. This comes from there was a Sabrina just did an interview with Richard Wolff, which I would recommend all of you make sure you watch. A really good interview. And at one point they talk about AI, and so in this post we have during a recent interview on the Sabby Sabs show, Professor Richard Wolff was asked about the prospect of AI taking people's jobs. And in part of his response, he described if AI is coming into businesses, right, there's two ways the business enterprise can handle it. In a capitalist enterprise, the AI coming in and it results in the workers becoming twice as productive. In that kind of business, the business owner says, great. And he fires half the workers and he takes home the same amount of profit. That's the kind of system we have now. In a worker-owned co-op enterprise, the employee members could decide, voting democratically, to cut their work hours in half and still retain the same amount of shared profits and benefits. And so it's a mistake to focus too much on the tool itself. I'm calling, an AI is the tool. Yes, there are some tools like automated killing machines that should be banned outright, but in the vast majority of cases, the critical question is who is wielding the tool and for whose benefit. At this point, AI is consistently overhyped, and it can't do a fraction of the things that a human can do. And try asking AI to do your laundry, right? But it is an important tool, and its capabilities are increasing year by year. But to whose benefit? Is it to the 99% or the top 0.1%? The key takeaway is this: it doesn't have to be this way. We can have a world that provides jobs, healthcare, education, and peace for everyone. But to get there is going to require a mass movement based on a set of clear, concise demands. This is what MCDS and 11 demands are all about. It's time for the 99% to come together. And towards that end, you can check out their links in this post from 11 Demands Collective and 11 Demands Needs Heroes, another post. So I encourage everyone to, whoops, that's the wrong thing. There we go. To check out that post to join the 11 Demands Substack. And yeah, let's see what we can do.
All right. And we are going to head on over to call in. If you want to participate, call in. We do it via Zoom. That link is now pinned at the top of the live chat. The oldie but goodies, they know about this, that come on to call in. But if you're new, you want to join, you can click on that link. I'm going to go ahead and open the room now. And this is your chance to come on and talk to me. And it's a fun place to be. We have fun on Call In. So if you have questions or whatever, when you join the Zoom, if you want to speak, at the very bottom, there's an option to raise your hand. You click on that, and that actually lets me know who wants to talk. So go ahead and do that. We do ask you that when you first join, if you can mute your mic, everybody can go ahead and mute. That helps. And if you need the link, if you come into the live stream a little bit later after the show, if you can go ahead and just go to sabrinasalvati.com so you can grab that link. And also the passcode will be there for you to join the Zoom call in. Eric, I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host on here. So you have that permission now. Great. Should be a pretty good conversation. Updates, I think Eric will know for sure tomorrow, but we may have Max Blumenthal on Thursday, I think. But I know you'll check with him. I know he's been traveling.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so we have so much to discuss. Yeah, so much to discuss there.
All right, we'll see you in the Zoom hangout.
How come we don't have call-ins on YouTube? Honestly, because this light in front of me gets hot, and I also like to, this is kind of information, but I like to take off my clothes. I like to take off my clothes and get comfy. But this ring light, if you're in front of it for a long time, it does get kind of toasty in here. So we're going to go ahead and hop on over to the call in. I'll see you guys there. So again, sabrinasalvati.com. That's how you can find that. And I'll see you over there. So have a good night. Keep up the fight. Oh boy, I'm not gonna live that one down.